Oh, hey there folks, real simple job today. Got a 2009 Kia Rondo with a 2.4 liter 4-cylinder in it. Got a leaky valve cover gasket, just seeping a tiny bit, just enough to make it stink like oil when it hits the exhaust manifold. So first thing we're going to do is pull this off. You just lift up on this and this cover here will come off. I already pried it up. But you can see it just goes on a couple clips. Go ahead and get that out of the side. You can see where they clip on, right here, right here. So it looks like the next thing we're going to do is we're going to get this hose off of here with the hose clamp right there. And we got another one right here. So we'll get both of those off real quick and I'll be right back. Just going to use a pair of pliers just to open those up and pull them off of there. Just going to squeeze that clamp like that, slide it right off of there. And we'll do the same thing for that over there. And after this comes off, we'll just try to get that off of there. Kind of hard to do with one hand. Let me get right back to you. So basically on this here, just got a flathead behind there, worked it loose. You don't want to rip it. It'll come right off just like that. We'll go ahead and do the same for this one over here. So they're both off. Just got the hoses tucked out of the way. Now it looks like we need to go after the coil packs here. I'll go ahead and take these out here. These are probably 10s. I'll double check and let you know on all the packs. And it looks like we'll have to get this electrical out of here too. Looks like there's a couple 10s on there as well. So I got these all loose. I'm just going to go ahead and pull them all out. And if you want to use an impact or whatever, you can. I prefer to use a good old ratchet. Let me get those off. Alright, I got the 4 bolts holding down the coil packs and the 2 bolts holding down the wire harness here. You can see these pop right out, no trouble. This whole thing should just be able to lift right out of here. And there's really no confusion of messing these up. It's a 4-cylinder and they're all in order. So we'll just go ahead and tuck them all out of the way. Looks like there's a little evidence of oil right there. Not leaking bad internally in there. It's leaking on the rear side where the exhaust manifold is. And just as a note, before I started this, I did go ahead and take my air hose and I blew all this off with compressed air so we don't drop anything, or we try to minimize the debris we drop in the top of the cylinder head when we pull the valve cover off. Alrighty, it appears like there's not much more to do. Just take these 10mm outs, 10mm bolts out in the center, on the front and the back, and I believe the valve cover will lift right off. I don't think the engine hoist mount will be in the way. If it is, I'll pull that off, but I doubt it. Let's go ahead and get those loose. Alright folks, I got all the bolts out, and you don't have to do this. I'm just showing this. If you're just, wrenching on the car for the first time, you can always put the bolts in order. In this case, it's not necessary. They're all the exact same size, and it's just a valve cover that we're going to be putting on, but just to show you. Alright, we're going to go ahead and see if this sucker will come right off. Alright folks, it was stuck on there a little bit. I just took a little flat blade. You want to be careful. I just put it in the corner of the timing cover right here. The valve cover gasket, gave it a little pry. And that's all it took. And you can see she's loose now. I'm going to go ahead and get her off of there. Alright, she's loose. I can't really pull it off and film at the same time because it's just me. I am curious as to see what it's going to look like under there, because since I've had this car, I got this car at 100,000 miles, currently has 167,000 on it, and I've always used fully synthetic oil changes at 5,000 mile intervals. So let's see what we got under that valve cover. Well folks, what do you think? I'd say that is a pretty clean engine for 167,000 miles. Looks pretty good. All the cam lobes look really nice, really clean. So here's where the spark plugs are, and you do have O-rings in there. You can see those weren't leaking, just barely. Wasn't leaking on the intake side. They usually don't, because the intake side doesn't get that hot. They usually always leak on the exhaust side where the exhaust manifold is, because there's more heat. And like I say, it wasn't even enough to get on the ground. Just enough to hit the exhaust manifold back there and just make it stink. So I'm going to get the surface all cleaned up here. Most modern cars don't take gaskets like the old vehicles. You know, the old cork or rubber gaskets or whatever that you had to be real careful of when you put them on there. Most modern stuff, it usually all fits down in a groove. So there's really no way to mess it up. It's all molded for you. See, just like these here. You can see where this broke off when I took it off where the bolts are. We got new gaskets for all that. So there's really no messing any of this stuff up. All I'd say is where the timing cover meets the cylinder head, stuff like that, you might want to put a little dab of RTV in those places. Let me get this cleaned up and I'll be back. Alright folks, so got all those surfaces cleaned up. Anywhere an O-ring or a rubber gasket's going to hit. And you can kind of see what happens to this material after so many years and cycles and, you know, everything of being in oil and heat. Like here's one of the O-rings that go around the spark plug wells. And you can see how they kind of a little crunchy. Not terrible, but let me try another one. You can hear it. Definitely seen worse, but they get brittle and they break. And that's what causes leaks. But like I say, on this one, was only leaking on the exhaust side. Here's the underneath of this valve cover gasket. Of course, they're all an ABS composite material nowadays, it seems like. I'm just going to go ahead and pull this out of there. Go ahead and do the whole thing. And I'll get this here cleaned up. See how they come out. Real simple nowadays. So just gave it a wipe down. I can just go ahead and throw the new gasket in here and put it on. I just wanted to take a look in here. For the most part, everything looks real good. 167,000 miles. Valve cover's never been off. You can see though, where the timing chain is over here in this area, you can see that there is some gunk in there. I would say that's extremely mild, but even so, I don't like seeing that, knowing that it's always had good synthetic oil in there. I'm going to go ahead and get that wiped off a little bit. So you do want to make sure this channel is clean. So I just took my little microfiber towel with a flat blade screwdriver and ran it all through there to make sure the whole channel's clean. That way the new gasket will go right in there. Let me go get that now. Alright folks, so this is where we run into trouble. This is for this vehicle, Hyundai Kia 2420. They checked it all in the computer at AutoZone, and I checked before I went down there. As you can see, this side here is molded. Looks like it's going to fit, right? Everything's molded. Look what happens here. That is not molded in the right place. This is not molded in the right place. And over here is not even close to fitting. So what do we do in a situation like this? Now, before I bought this gasket, I was reading the reviews, and a lot of people were saying it didn't fit right, and I thought they just didn't know what they were talking about. But apparently I have the same problem. So we're going to have to figure this out and see what we're going to do here. I had it this way the first time, then I flipped it over, then I just flipped it back over. You can see everything lines up real well, except for when we get here. See how this is good? Look at how far that one off that is. And look over here. I mean, this is insanity. I'm going to see if I can stretch it, but you really shouldn't have to. Well, folks, all this side lined up perfectly up to about here. I had to stretch it And I really don't like the fact that I had to stretch it in there. Because you can see it just, I don't believe it's right. I've never had one I had to stretch like this before. But we're going to hope for the best. We're going to put it on because nobody else has one in my town. I think it'll work. I just don't think it was made exactly right. And I've heard a lot of, I used to use Velcro all the time. I've heard they're all garbage nowadays. I don't know if that's true or not, but I know this is the right gasket. Maybe their mold's wrong. I don't know, guys. But we're gonna go ahead and run with it. Now, I know back in the old days we'd always put a dab of RTV right here where surfaces meet. The instructions don't say to do that. There's no mention of anything. But the factory one did have a little dab. So I'm going to go ahead and put a little tiny dab of RTV on each side. Alright, we just got a little dab of Ultra Black Permatex on there, on either side. I'm going to go ahead and slap her back on there. Alright, we got all the bolts in there finger tight. I'm going to go ahead and tighten them up and torque them down to torque specs. Alright folks, we got all the bolts torqued. Kind of confusing trying to find the torque spec on this. I found it anywhere from 32 to 78 inch-pounds, and you know, anywhere from like 4 to 8 foot-pounds. I just went off inch-pounds. I just kind of put it in the middle, 50 inch-pounds. Seems good to me. They weren't very tight when I took them off, so 50 inch-pounds on every one of them. Yes, I did use a 3/8 drive torque wrench. I go ahead and stick the spark plugs back in there. Not too much to see there. Kind of went in the same way they came out. Kind of just like that. I'll get them pushed down and get the bolts back in them. Alright, no reason to really torque those 4 bolts down, or these 2 down in my opinion. I just ran them down with the 3/8 drive ratchet just till they were snug. Not very much torque on those at all. If I had to guess, I don't know, maybe 15 or 20 inch-pounds at the most, just to hold them snug. I'll go ahead and get these 2 hoses put back on. Alright, got those hoses back on, put the clamps where they went originally. And I didn't show this, but I pulled this wire off earlier. Just went ahead and attached that wire. Everything's good. We'll just go ahead and put the beauty cover back on it. Alright folks, there's the beauty cover. Everything's back on, and now we'll just have to wait and see how long this Velcro valve cover gasket lasts. Now you would think it would be the same as a factory, right? Because it just fits in there and just kind of sandwiches. But I'll tell you, I've used quite a few of these types of valve cover gaskets over the years. Like these little 4-cylinders and whatnot, different, engines, Ford, Kias, all kinds of stuff. And they always leak, like I say, on the exhaust side. But with the little Ford Focus I had, I believe that had the 2-liter in it. That one, the original valve cover gasket probably lasted to 120, 130 miles until it started leaking. Now that was, backwards of what this is. You had the intake in the rear and the exhaust in the front on that one. So you could see it leaking on the exhaust. Now once I switched over to a Velcro, I'm not kidding you, maybe like 10,000 miles it started leaking again. Put another one on, another 10,000, started leaking. So I don't want to blame the valve cover gasket necessarily. It could have just been, these ABS or composite valve cover gaskets. It might have been slightly warped, whatever. But it is what it is with the materials cars are made out of these days. But anyway, thanks for watching. Real simple do-it-yourself project. Hope it helps someone. See you next time. And just in case you're wondering what tools I used, little 3/8 torque wrench, 3/8 ratchet. That looked to be about a 3-inch extension, 2.5, 3-inch extension. I used a 10mm deep well socket. You don't have to use a deep well, but that's what I had. That's what I used. A pair of pliers, a scraper, just to pop the little rubber O-rings off the inside of the valve cover there, and a flat blade screwdriver just to pop the valve cover off initially, and a couple of these microfiber cloths, and that's all I needed. Y'all be good.